You got noise on your side?
You're sure that they lie to try something? 4, 3.
Let's try it.
1.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order. A new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests. He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial. How can I convince you when you refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time that I come here. Your eyes refuse to speak the body they glance away. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going over Clay Nuts the show? My message to those guys that are listening this morning is go get a cup of coffee, maybe you'll learn something. We don't simply say to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Well, it's just a show. How can I explain the thing that the state knowing that you're right? Blinded by the light. He is the free American, Clay Douglas. That's the Green American, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger makes me crazy till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon down from the sky and drop the sun. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is J.B. Campbell. Hello, J.B. How are you?
Hi, Clay. I'm doing good.
You know, there's a couple of different directions I'd like to go in today. A couple of weeks ago, I put up a video called The Greatest Truth Never Told. And it was a documentary, and a good one, I think, about World War II, about Hitler. And I even put at the request of my friend Richard Palmquist on Truth Radio, I put up a copy, English version of Mein Kampf. He said, I always wanted to read that. And I said, well, I think you should read it. And JB, I got instant hostility. My motorcycle was in the shop, and a friend of mine I thought he was a friend. He'd been living next door to me. He said, I'll give you a ride to the post office, to the store, while your bike's in the shop. And while I was riding with him, I told him, I got an interesting film up here to see it. And he blew up. What, Hitler? You support Hitler? Well, don't exactly support Hitler. He's been dead for a few years. Didn't die where you think he did. Didn't die when you think he did. But, John F. Kennedy even commented on that someday, Hitler would be one of the most important figures in the world. And this blind, unreasoning anger at a historical figure who I don't believe, even if he did, which I don't believe, he did kill 6 million Jews, since there wasn't that many in that part of the country at the time, that part of Europe at the time. Even if he did, Churchill and Stalin and Franklin Delano Roosevelt were far worse. I mean, our own president stole our gold at $16 an ounce by passing a law against owning gold. And so all of this blind, unreasoning anger and hostility towards Hitler came from where? Our press? I find that pretty amazing. And I just saw a video, I've got it up, I've listened to part of it, called Nazi Supporting Royal Compares Putin to Hitler. And I thought that might be an interesting topic, since Putin has fairly well kicked the Jewish oligarchs out of Russia, and the Ukraine, where all of the fighting's going on and all the killing's going on in the Ukraine, that's the old Khazarian. That's basically the area of a Khazar that we don't talk about in our history books anymore. What's going on, JB, in your opinion?
Well, I'd say the Jews are losing their grip on our minds pretty dramatically. They've had it all their way ever since, 1913, especially when they took control again of our currency and credit by somehow taking the manufacture of our money over to themselves and making it into a profit-making corporation. And that gave them total power over our minds through, as you said, through the press.
Well,
was it within?
Our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, who pretty much wrote our Bill of Rights, and he warned us, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land we conquered. Exactly what we've been seeing happening this century, this last century here.
Yeah, this is the whole issue about our lives that has been kept a dirty secret by the press. That they're the ones who failed us and led us into this series of slaughterhouse wars and deadly depressions.
In my book, Mystery Babylon, I document that Reuters was purchased by the Rothschilds back in the 1800s. And they bought the controlling interest in the editorial for the New York Times and other major newspapers. And, of course, they backed William Randolph Hearst. That's how he got that castle on the side of the mountain there.
Yeah, within a couple of years of taking over our money supply and charging us interest on our own money, which is something that's so mind-boggling that most people just cannot grasp it. It's so bold, blatant, and criminal. But that's what our Congress did. Our federal government did that to us, just as it did right at the founding of the country. When they started up this U.S. bank, the first bank of the U.S., they did exactly the same thing, and then they got a second charter on it, second 20-year charter on it, At that point, Andrew Jackson put a stop to it. But these guys are like rust. They never sleep. And we are too busy trying to make a living to counter these psychopaths, because they're totally supported by their own kind. They're subsidized, encouraged, totally supported to overthrow us and seize total control over us, which they accomplished in 1913 through deception and through this trick in the Congress, when everybody else went home for Christmas and they kept a few stooges around. They got a quorum and they passed this Federal Reserve Act, 1913, and that destroyed what was left of America, and it could not withstand this treachery. It was just too fundamental and too basic to our lives to have our lifeblood, which is our currency, in the control of Jews. You can't survive that disease without doing what Andrew Jackson did. And unfortunately, we never had another president of that caliber. Not that I support everything Andrew Jackson did, but in that regard, just like Kennedy, I don't support what Kennedy did, except when it came to the Federal Reserve. You know, Jack Kennedy declared war on the Federal Reserve.
Executive Order 11110. I still carry one of his $5 bills in my wallet.
The executive order had to do with silver certificates. This is a big area of confusion for people. All he did was issue over $4 billion in U.S. notes. He didn't do. There was no law that he passed. He just did it. This is where he screwed up. He did this against the Federal Reserve, but he didn't tell anybody. He just did it.
And the first thing Johnson did on the plane flying on Air Force One was recall all of that money. That's why I've got one of the few $5 bills still in existence that says United States note.
Yeah, but see, he didn't explain to the people the significance of what he did. That's where he screwed up. He should have made a big deal about it, saying, listen, people, here's what I'm doing. Here's how we get out from under the heel of these nasty Jews who control us. Of course, he couldn't say that, but he could have said that the owners of this private profit-making corporation, the Federal Reserve System, are killing us, and in response, I'm issuing debt-free currency. We don't have to pay anybody anything for this. This is what was actually set up in 1787. As crazy as it sounds, I mean, the Constitution, as you realize by now, I mean, I hate the Constitution. The Constitution is our enemy. But there was one good thing in there, and that was that the Congress, it's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, the Congress shall issue currency and regulate the value thereof, or mint the coinage, same thing, and regulate the value thereof. The crazy thing about that stinking Constitution was that clause number 1 said that the Congress shall borrow money. What the hell is that? I mean, why, you don't need to borrow money if you can print your own money. This is what Hitler did. This is the great thing. This is the greatest thing that any human being has ever done, probably in history, was what Hitler did by issuing debt-free currency, which rescued Germany from not only the Great Depression, which we were under too, but from the Versailles Treaty that demanded these fake reparations that destroyed Germany even before the Depression. 10 years before the Depression started, Germany was destroyed by these reparations, these payments, because they said, the winners said, you guys started the war, so you're going to pay. And it destroyed Germany. That's what led to Hitler coming to power, was what the bankers did to Germany. And what he did after he came to power, issuing debt-free currency, is what guaranteed World War II. You're not allowed to do this as far as these Jews are concerned. This is a cause for carpet bombing, smoking rubble, which used to be magnificent cities, turned them into smoking rubble. Why? Because he issued debt-free currency. Jack Kennedy issued debt-free currency, got shot in the head. Abraham Lincoln issued debt-free currency, got shot in the head. This is what you get, because they don't explain. I mean, Hitler didn't have to explain. The German people could see the benefits within 18 months. My God, they've gone from starvation to paid holiday cruises and buying their own cars and homes after starving to death. Well, Kennedy failed to tell the people what he was doing. He was he was a hotshot. I admire what he did, but it got him killed because he didn't explain what he was doing. He just did it. So
well, the deception by the press was going on hot and heavy then. They were trying to accuse Kennedy of blaming the Bay of Pigs and numerous other things on him. And so the press was building up hostility to him, towards him.
Oh, he had a lot of enemies. I mean, he was such a renegade. I mean, I have to say, he was probably our greatest president. You know, on the political side. On the personal side, he was a mess, womanizing and screwing around and taking risks. He was a Jekyll and Hyde, but the Dr. Jekyll side was pretty damn good. You know, he made mistakes going to Vietnam, but then he decided to correct that by bringing the guys back. That was a deadly mistake. He didn't explain that to the people. He didn't explain anything. He just did stuff. You know, just like Joe McCarthy in the Senate. Now, people don't realize Joe McCarthy and Jack Kennedy were the closest of friends. Bobby Kennedy was on Joe McCarthy's staff until Roy Cohn, this Jewish token prosecutor, was so obnoxious that Bobby Kennedy had to quit because they just butted heads all the time. And Cohn was typical Jew, just a nasty character. But, you know, Joe McCarthy was engaged to Jack Kennedy's sister, Eunice. They were going to get married. Joe McCarthy was the reason Jack Kennedy became a senator. Even though Joe McCarthy was a Republican, Kennedy was a Democrat. In the 1952 Senate election in Massachusetts, McCarthy should have supported, you know, politically, should have supported Henry Cabot Lodge, the Republican. But he, you know, Lodge is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, is a total world government guy. And he didn't campaign for Lodge. And it became known that he was, you know, he was a friend of Jack Kennedy. So that's really how Jack Kennedy became a senator. Because McCarthy was so powerful in '52, so influential, that if he'd have campaigned for Lodge, Kennedy wouldn't have had a chance. He'd have stayed in the Congress. But, no, Kennedy got to be a senator. And he was pretty good. I mean, he was, you know, I have to say up front, the federal government is our deadly enemy. It should never have been started. The Constitution is a fraud. We've got to overthrow this federal thing, but even though, you know, that gave us two houses of the Congress, the upper house and the lower house. That's where we went wrong. But I'm just taking these guys for what they were. Jack Kennedy was a pretty interesting character. He just had personal weaknesses that brought him down, and his ego. You know, he was a treacherous son of a bitch. He and his brother were treacherous bastards. He got elected with the help of the mafia because his father, Joe Kennedy Sr., was a bootlegger during Prohibition. He was allied with the organized crime, and he asked organized crime to help get Jack into the Senate, and then he asked them to help him get the presidency, and they did. And then once Kennedy became president, he sicked Bobby on the mafia, the guys who brought him into power. Well, what the hell? You know, that's what I'm talking about. he did crazy stuff. I'm not saying you should accept the help of organized crime, but if you do, you don't turn on them and send all the guys to prison and expect to get away with it. That's insane. So he was a Jekyll and Hyde. I'm just going on the Federal Reserve and the U.S. notes that he issued, $4 billion, which was an act of war.
Now, the press also made McCarthyism into a bad word, and some of Roosevelt's best friends were communists, he said, including Uncle Joe Stalin, who was pretty much responsible for the murder of 60 million white Christian Russians, wasn't he?
Yeah, in those days, in the 50s, it was understood by the Jews that if you're anti-communist, you're anti-Jewish. I mean, most of the people that McCarthy asked to come before his committee and discuss things were Jews. That's why he hired Roy Cohn as his chief prosecutor. Roy Cohn had prosecuted the Rosenbergs and got the death penalty for Julius and Ethel Rosenberg for passing nuclear secrets to Stalin. So McCarthy figured, well, I mean, obviously the people I'm going after here, these communists, are all Jews, so I'd better cover myself and prevent the accusation of anti-Semitism by having Roy Cohn as my chief tough guy. It didn't work. Roy Cohn, a homosexual, and a demented homosexual, along with J. Edgar Hoover. They were lovers. I mean, they were sex partners, let's put it that way. He was so screwed up. I mean, Roy Cohn was out of control. And then he got his boyfriend, Dave Shine, exempted from the draft. And that led to the Army McCarthy hearings. And so McCarthy was sandbagged and destroyed by his own Jews on his own staff. They brought him down. He was loyal to them as much as he could be, but it just discredited him too much. It made a monkey out of him. Nothing to do with communists, nothing to do with his being incorrect about who he had accused or questioned. He didn't really accuse anybody except the Secretary of State, George Catlett Marshall, who was not a Jew. He wrote a book about that guy called America's Retreat from Victory, because he documented how George Marshall, who had been chief of staff during World War II and Eisenhower's boss, he documented how George Marshall had brought Mao Zedong to power in China, the communists. And of course, these are unforgivable crimes. And he had to be destroyed because Marshall was working for Stalin during World War II. He was taking his orders from Harry Hopkins, who was like Franklin Roosevelt's Colonel House. He was his alter ego. He was his controller in the White House. Turns out Harry Hopkins was Joseph Stalin's #1 secret agent in the U.S. government. Harry Hopkins gave George Marshall his orders, which, for example, included ignoring the Japanese attempts to surrender for several years following the Battle of Midway. Marshall said, no, we can't discuss surrender terms. Well, why not? I mean, let's prevent all these guys from getting killed in the Pacific. No, that would be premature. Why? Because Stalin wanted to bring his troops into Manchuria. He claimed he needed 90 days after the victory in Europe, whenever that might come. Whenever VE Day would come, he wanted 90 days to transport Soviet troops to Manchuria and take over that part of China. And so that's why that's why George Marshall refused to hear of the Japanese surrender feelers and attempts to surrender, which became frantic after Okinawa and so forth. I mean, they just said, okay, we give up. They just asked if Hirohito could stay on the throne. George Marshall made it clear, he said, no, we're going to hang this son of a bitch. Oh my God, this drove the Japanese into frenzies of desperation. It was calculated. They knew what that would do to the Japanese mind. He was their god, and here we were threatening to hang him. So that led to the kamikazes. That's how desperate they were. But Marshall was a communist agent working for Harry Hopkins, the chief communist agent for Stalin, and McCarthy was closing in on him by revealing that it was Marshall who brought Mao Zedong to power in China, the communist butcher. That was our guy.
And of course, that they betrayed Chiang Kai-shek too.
Yeah, even the Congress in those days, they were astonished at Marshall's treachery against the Chiang Kai-shek, our allies during World War II, the nationalist Chinese, led by Chiang Kai-shek. So the Congress said, well, no, I mean, we got to keep supporting that guy. He's our ally. So they sent a whole shipload of arms to Chiang Kai-shek and other sinews of war. George Marshall had the ship sunk in the Bay of Biscay. He bragged about it, and he said, as chief of staff, this is after the war, he said, as chief of staff, I armed 110 nationalist Chinese divisions. Now, with a stroke of a pen, I disarm them. Because the Council on Foreign Relations wanted communists to take over in Asia. I mean, not only Mao Zedong was appointed by the United States government, but also Ho Chi Minh, 1945, and Kim Il-sung in North Korea was appointed dictator by a joint operation between America and the Soviet Union. It was our ally. You know, the Soviets were our allies. This is hard for Americans to grasp, I think. For 3.5 years, we were the military partners of the Soviet Union. It doesn't compute in the American mind. They just reject it. No, I can't deal with it. That's too weird. But that's the truth.
You know, there's a conversation between McCarthy and James Forrestal that just sticks in my mind. McCarthy had made some comment about the communists being stupid, and Forrestal said, no, consistency is not the mark of stupidity. If they were just stupid, occasionally they'd make a mistake in our favor.
Isn't that the truth? Forrestal was the first one to see what was going on. He was the first Secretary of Defense. He'd been the Secretary of the Navy. And of course, before, in those days, it was the Defense Department was more rightfully called the War Department. Well, finally people realized, hey, we shouldn't have a War Department. So they changed the name to the Department of Defense, because defense allows you to do anything. Oh, we're defending ourselves. Well, no, America doesn't defend itself at all. It is aggressive. It's a warmongering monster. Always has been since 1861.
I tell people for the last few weeks I've been hearing music in the background, and an old Eagles star band member singing, we have met the enemy, and he is us. We are the New World Order. We've been groomed to take over the empire on which the sun never sets. And, of course, the empire which the sun never sets is still pretty much running this Washington, D.C. with its Bar Association lawyers and its Bank of England, central banks, and yeah, I can also hear Carl Kling singing in the background, saying, if you got your very own printing press, pretty soon you can buy up the whole neighborhood.
That's the issue. I told a joke over the weekend at a meeting. This German came over to America, spent a year, went back home. His friend said, "Hey, did you figure out the American political system?" I said, "I think I did. As I understand it, the working class are Democrat, the middle class are Republican, and the rich are communist." That's pretty much what it is. I think there were some gasps when I told the joke, because it was kind of a respectable audience. But that's the way it is. The rich, the communists, as Gary Allen used to say, communism is not a movement of the downtrodden. It's a power grab by the super rich. That's why the American government, the State Department, has appointed every single communist dictator since Lenin and Trotsky in 1917. As I just said, the next one to be appointed was actually Ho Chi Minh, 1945. You know, Ho Chi Minh was a U.S. intelligence agent working for the OSS against the Japanese. Nobody in Vietnam, or in those days they called it Indochina, nobody in Indochina ever heard of Ho Chi Minh or Nguyen Ai Quoc or Nguyen Tat Phan or his other names that he used. He was a communist spy and saboteur. He spent most of his days and years in Moscow. Roosevelt and Stalin brought him back to Hanoi during the war, and then in the summer of 1945, the OSS groomed him for leadership and appointed him the dictator of the northern part of Indochina, which became known as Vietnam, North Vietnam. Did the same thing in North Korea, 1945, summer of 45. By January of 1950, not even 5 years later, we were at war with Kim Il-sung in Korea on the side of our puppets, the South Koreans, but nobody in America realized that Kim Il-sung was also our puppet. Same exact thing happened in Vietnam. We started sending the U.S. Army into Vietnam in the early 50s, advisors and diplomatic missions, with generals and colonels in charge of them. And of course they conned Jack Kennedy into supporting this adventure. It was an Eisenhower operation. We'll get to Eisenhower in a minute. But Eisenhower started this whole charade in Vietnam by sending the military in there to support the South Vietnamese against our puppet in the North, which became full-blown by the early 1960s. Kennedy had several thousand so-called advisors in there training South Vietnamese to kill. And he decided, "Ooh, boy, this is a huge mistake. What the hell's going on here? It's going to be a war, which we will lose just like we lost Korea." So he, on his own, just started bringing it back. And that could not be. Whether it was the Federal Reserve that ordered him killed, or the U.S. Army or the CIA that ordered him killed, it doesn't matter. It's all the same machine. It's all the same money-making monopoly machine. It's all run by Jews. The Federal Reserve is Jewish.
And so is the whole drug industry. I mean, my book, Mystery Babylon, I documented Operation Watchtower. And George Bush, as CIA director, was covering for the Mossad here. Mossad, Michael Harari, who bragged about, at a party, taking down the World Trade Center. Michael Harari was Noriega's handler reason we had to invade Panama was to get all the paperwork to tie Noriega to George Bush. And so the Operation Watchtower, they built the radio guide towers that brought over 100 planes into Walbrook Air Force Base in Panama. The cargo was cocaine. And that cargo was shipped up to a little place called Mena, Arkansas, that was protected by the governor from the state boys. And so George Bush brought all the cocaine into this country.
Yeah, that was called the Enterprise, run by Oliver North.
Yes,
the great
sir.
Patriot. The great patriot in the White House, Oliver stinking North.
By the way, I think I stole the website Free American from Oliver North. He was trying to use it for a while. After I got my magazine out, he gave that up. But
yeah,
my friend,
after I started the militia movement, he decided he would start the militia movement too, but it was going to be run by the government, run by him. It didn't fly.
Now, the militia movement, of course, they accused me of doing that too, and 20 years later, the militia had an effect, I would say a positive effect on the Bundys. Now, I don't know, who was the good guys and who's the bad guys in every situation here, but the militia did have an effect on the whole Bundy situation. And of course they sent in their shooters to screw that up. They wouldn't even let them on the Bundy's property, so they went to Las Vegas and shot a couple of cops to try to demonize the whole Bundy militia movement. But that's standard practice, isn't it?
That's pretty typical. I mean, assuming that those two were not government agents, there's some suspicion of that, rightfully so, because they were so demented and so degenerate in their lifestyles, apparently. So, I'm not sure about this, but that's what is being reported. But I think it's fair to say that if they were not agents of the government, provocateur, as they say, which one of the Bundy sons thought they might have been, the way they were carrying on there at the ranch. But assuming they were not, they were just round the bend in their minds. They were driven there by this treacherous government. I mean, when you have a government that supplies state-of-the-art military-style rifles to the Mexican drug cartels with the understanding that they're going to kill as many people with them as possible to discredit the Second Amendment and thereby disarm American people. When you have a government that would do such a thing, then you're pretty well screwed.
That's the same agency of the government. That's the same agency of the government, the BATF, passing the guns down to the drug lords. They also murdered 17 little children and their families at Waco, and blew up the Murrah building to try to blame it on the militias.
Yeah, this is the way our government works, and even if those two were innocent of any kind of federal treachery, they were driven mad. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. They were driven mad by this monster government that we're under. This is what you get. People go crazy. People have gone crazy just being in the John Birch Society, let alone what's happening today. It's going to get worse.
You bring up a good point here, and this has really been weighing on my mind. I've been trying to sit down and do an article or a publisher's column for the July issue, and it's hard for me to get a grip on it. Who do we turn to? There's like Who's on our side? I mean, I took an oath to defend the Constitution, regardless of whether it's a perfect document or not. At least the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence was pretty well written. And you got an organization. You want a stand for your organization. Try the Bill of Rights. But we've been demonized. The whole war on drugs. That was how can you have a war on drugs when the government's bringing in the drugs, when the government's covering for the major drug dealers, and what's that in your pocket there, son? Whoa, is that cocaine? Is that marijuana? Whoa, you're going to go to jail. You're going to go to work for IBM for 25 cents an hour. Well, everything we accuse China of doing with slave labor, we're doing here. It's called the criminal justice system, and that's actually a pretty good description. It is criminal, and there ain't no justice for us. Ayn Rand told us if you ever allow the government has no control over honest citizens, so they got to make criminals out of us. To me, that's what the drug laws are about. And 45 years ago, I wrote a book about the United States in a future time when victimless crimes had been abolished, the prison system had been abolished, and you could get anything you wanted at the corner drugstore. That's happened in Colorado now. They're making millions or billions off of taxes on marijuana, and you can walk down the street with marijuana in your pocket without having to worry about going to prison like I did back in the 60s. To me, that's the brightest spot. That's the brightest spot in the news right now. The brightest spot in our nation is what they're doing, what they've done in Colorado and I guess Washington, I believe.
Just learned yesterday. I live in southeast Idaho, right next to Jackson, Wyoming. Just learned yesterday that we've got a plane coming in here every week into Driggs, Idaho. Pretty long runway here for a small airport. You can bring in jets on it. We got a plane coming in here every week with cocaine, and it's protected by our law enforcement here. This is typical. It's typical operation. This is what Oliver North really originated with Mena, Arkansas. Bill Clinton, he and Bill Clinton ran that Mena, Arkansas operation to bring in the cocaine from Nicaragua or Panama, wherever it came from.
Panama, yes, sir.
And then trading it for AK-47s for the Contras. Anyway.
Yeah, Bill Tyree, who's doing life in Walpole Prison. They murdered his wife and gave him life in prison, framed him for the murder. And I was in touch with him, and when Clinton was running against Bush, I got a hold of Bill. I had him on my show several times. He's named in the Catolo document, and the Catolo document's contained in my book, Mystery Babylon, New World Order Unveiled. I said, Bill, I sent copies of Catolo's document to Bill Clinton. He's when he was running against Bush, and he started laughing at me. I go, what are you laughing about, man? Bush is a drug dealer. Shouldn't we get him out of here? He said, Clinton ain't going to say nothing about it. He worked for George Bush. You'll hear about a little place called Mena, Arkansas this year. And he was absolutely right. I sent the document to George Stephanopoulos. I was in touch with George Stephanopoulos and never heard a peep about Mena, Arkansas out of Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Stephanopoulos, we're really run by homosexuals. I have to point this out. It's probably pretty obvious, but we got a president who was a homosexual prostitute. The president before him was a closet homosexual. Bush Sr. was a homosexual. And they deal we learned that Bush Sr. was involved in that Franklin child sex operation.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I mean, Rahm Emanuel mysteriously left the Obama administration to become mayor of Chicago. He's a raging homosexual. Stephanopoulos, I mean, the news media is run by homosexuals, the major corporations are run by homosexuals. We've got a rotten situation in this country. The rot is so deep.
And you know, June, Obama has declared June the RBGT or something like that month. The whole month of June is dedicated to gays, lesbians, transsexuals, and bisexuals.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's an attack on the morals of the people. It's demoralizing. It's sick. It is sick, and I mean, come on, you just don't get any worse. And this is our president. Larry Sinclair was telling the truth about Obama, and you know, I still say he's the perfect New World Order leader. Well, he's black, he's white, he's gay, he's Muslim, he's Christian, he's Jewish. Parents were Jewish. And Wayne Madison just did a whole article that backs up what I said, and I believe it was April or May's Free American. Obama was just created by the CIA, his parents, his mother, his father, Obama Sr., they were all working for the CIA. So again, what we had, we had Bush working for the CIA, and he was put in as Reagan's vice president. That blew away everybody that supported Reagan, and that almost got Reagan killed, didn't it? I guess George wanted to be president sooner.
Yeah, you know, in any other country, if the vice president's dear friend's son had shot at the president, which would logically have brought in the vice president as president, I mean, the vice president would have been put on trial for treason and attempted murder. Or murder. But not in this country. Nothing is said about whoever that guy is.
You'd think having the director of the CIA standing outside the school book depository in Dallas as the president drove by and was shot by the two guys up on the railroad bridge, you'd think that might trigger a little bit of suspicion too, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And right out in front of him, on Elm Street, the Secret Service driver, William Greer, was hitting the brakes going downhill, coming to a full stop, right in the kill zone, twisting around two or three times, looking back at the president, waiting until the coup de grace was made. Then he gasses it. And the other guy, Kellerman, who was Kennedy's chief bodyguard, he's twisting around watching. And as soon as the headshot is made, they gas it. And he says, okay, we got to get out of here, to Greer. What the hell? And nothing ever happens to Greer. I mean, nobody even asked him a question. Why did you stop? Why did you stop? When you'd already heard gunshots from behind and from wherever. You had a bullet hole in the darn windshield. And you stopped? And looked around? It's the goddamnest thing I've ever seen in my life. That's a Zapruder film. I mean, it's been altered. The head wounds are painted in with black to hide the actual trajectories of bullets, but they can't do anything about that image on the other side of the sprocket hole of Greer twisting around. I mean, You can see the motorcycle cops almost crashed into the back of the limo as he came to a full stop. And even Clint Hill had the chance to jump off the second car, run up and jump on the limo. And nothing is ever said by the news media that this is how rotten this country is. There's no hope for a peaceful solution to our problem. It has to come from violence. It has to be a violent revolution against these criminals. They're in our face. They've been in our face for 3 generations. And we're just mesmerized by the awfulness of it all. We're paralyzed by the blatant criminality. There is no peaceful solution to this. The government has to be overthrown by force and violence. Well, you know, what is the suggestion on how to do it peacefully? Who has a check and balance on a criminal government? You can't ask them to stop. You can't petition them and say, please stop doing what you're doing. It didn't work.
Look at, you know, I've been through the whole presidential race coast to coast. I traveled coast to coast with Charles Collins, who wanted to eliminate the Federal Reserve, wanted to do what Kennedy did. You never heard of Charles Collins. Most people never heard of Charles Collins unless they bought the Free American, unless they listened to my radio show. Because every time he got up at the Republican conventions to speak, they unplugged his microphone and turned the cameras off and pointed them at the ground. And the night before, they would go in at midnight and take down every Collins for President sign that we put up beside the Buchanan, beside the Dole, beside the Alice Keys. Nobody knew. Nobody knew Charles Collins wanted to do the right thing. So how you gonna elect the good people? And even the Tea Party is being taken over. The latest Tea Party candidate to win turns out to be Jewish also. I guess that's why we heard about him. Brat. What was that? Yeah, somebody by the name of Brat.
Well, you know, the Constitution gave us the federal government. We didn't deserve that. That's not what the revolution was fought for, as Patrick Henry pointed out when he read the Constitution. So what is this? This is not what we fought for. And we were shot in the head right from the start. Why? Because of the Federalists. Who were the Federalists? Well, that was the party of Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton did 2 horrible things to us before he was shot by Aaron Burr. He gave us the Constitution, a central government, which we didn't have for 8 years before that. We didn't need it. And he gave us the private central bank. Why? Well, his cronies, his bosses in Europe had made war loans to the rebels during the revolution, and they wanted to get paid back. And he naturally wanted his buddies to get paid back. But there was no mechanism under the Articles of Confederation to pay them back. There was no way to tax the people. And that's what they desperately wanted. They wanted taxation. So, you can't have a central bank without a central government to enforce it. So he gave us both. He gave us first the central government with this Constitution. Gave us a president. What the hell is a president? Well, it's someone who presides. Okay, people had never heard of that before because it was the first one in history. First president. Who's going to be the president? Oh, let's have George Washington, our great founding father, our great military leader. Now, he was not a Federalist. He was independent. He was above party politics, but he was essentially a Federalist, because he was at the Constitutional Convention. He led the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. He gave us the Constitution, and it made him a dictator. That's what the president is. It's a dictator, supposedly controlled by the two houses of Congress and the Supreme Court. But what if they're all in agreement? What if they all want to do the same thing? Where's the check and balance? There is none.
The whole communist regime, the Tsar was not a bad guy. He was our friend. The Russian people were our friend. And it was the bankers, Jacob Schiff, that financed Marx and Lenin and put them on that train with the gold to go over and start the Bolshevik, the Jewish revolution over there. And even Hitler, now Hitler might have done a lot of good, but he was still controlled by Warburg, the bankers. They still controlled him to some extent. Obviously, not to the extent that they controlled Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt. But now
he was out of control. He was out of control from their point of view. You don't create debt-free currency under their control. That's something that is not allowed, and you will be killed, and your whole country will be turned into smoking rubble if you do that. You got to appreciate what Hitler did. He signed his own death warrant by creating debt-free currency and rehabilitating a prostrate, starving Germany within a year and a half. That was crime against Jews, and never to be forgiven, has to be made an example of. And that's what it was. That's what happened to Germany. Germany was an example. If you try this is what you get. I mean, Saddam Hussein said, "I'm not going to sell oil in dollars anymore. I want euros for it." Well, that was a death penalty. We got him killed.
Now let me ask you about this. I've got a little clip here I'm going to play. It's about 17 minutes. I'm not playing the whole thing. I just want to do a little bit. The headlines on it on YouTube are Nazi supporting royal compares Putin to Hitler. Now, some of the things that are happening in Belgium, there's a common law court that's gone after the Pope and the Queen for genocide, for child sacrifice. It seems like this Queen is reptilian type of a person who likes to molest children too. In this report by a gentleman, I believe he's in Japan right at the moment, he says that George Soros is selling all of his stock in banks, in Bank of America and Wells Fargo and all that. And again, the headline says Nazi supporting royal compares Putin to Hitler. What we're seeing is Putin demonized again, so they could restart the whole Cold War and make China and Russia into our enemies. We've got ships going over there, and aircraft carriers and fighter planes and drones going over to the area around China. Let me play this little clip and see, we'll go from there.
He's also boosted his stake in Herbalife. More on them in just a second.
George Soros.
New position
George Soros is buying Herbalife and selling his bank stocks.
In Yamana Gold, in Alrico Gold, and New Gold Incorporated, there being the miners part. If Herbalife sounds familiar to folks out there, it's because just a couple of months ago we covered that story here on New World Next Week as staking $1 billion that Herbalife will fail and then lobbying to bring it down. Again, this sort of activist investors, if you will. So, James, I think with all of these stories, we see that the same folks that stand to profit, both literally and figuratively, are the ones pushing and moving and funding a lot of this. And the one last related I'll tag on to there A new global financial order emerging, Putin and the de-dollarization of Russia-China trade. So file that away, but remember it. As we move to our second story, and that's when we bring out, as they call it on the interwebs, the Godwin. Prince Charles's Hitler row risks triggering an international scandal. That's right, Prince Charles, heir apparent to the British throne, declares Putin on par with Hitler. The prince caused controversy when he told a woman in Canada that the Russian president is doing just about the same as Hitler in an...
All right, hang on a minute. We got a short break here. Introduce you to Truth Radio and the Free American Broadcasting on Truth Radio.
What's really going on in the world that mainstream media won't tell you. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs. TruthRadio.com. The truth is out. If you've always wanted to understand a little bit more about law, but not make a deep study of it enough that you would get a degree or be admitted to the bar, but you'd still like to know just a little bit more than you have earlier learned, here's the perfect solution for you. We have received a number of copies of a booklet entitled Our American Common Law. This booklet is written by Howard Fisher and Dale Pond. If you'd like a copy, this just under 30 pages will really give you a practical grasp of what the common law is and how it fits into your daily affairs as it relates to courts and jurisprudence. Our address is Post Office Box 344, Nipomo, California, zip code 93444. No price, just donate to Truth Radio. We'll send it to you. Thanks. Looking forward to hearing from you soon.
All right. We're back. You're listening to Clay Douglas on the Free American. And we've got J.B. Campbell, known as my guest today. Now, this whole thing comparing Putin to Hitler, it seems to me that that must mean Putin is somehow doing the right thing. Is it possible that both Russia and China wised up to these globalists, wised up to the communist system, wised up to the fact they're being used and exploited and enslaved by the bankers, and are trying to break free and break the Federal Reserve? Now, China's got a lot of gold. They've been buying gold. What is your take on what's happening there? And by the way, folks, if you run a real accurate history of Hitler, I recommend you go to my website, see the greatest story never told. Since the mid-20th century, the world has only heard one side of an incredible story, the story of a boy from an ordinary family whose ambition was to become an artist, but who instead became a drifter. His destiny, however, was not to drift into awaiting oblivion, but to rise to the greatest heights of power, eventually to become one of the most influential men who ever lived. Here, for the first time, is a documented account of a story many believe to be the greatest story never told. And right below that, I've got this quote: Hitler will emerge from the hatred that surrounds him as one of the most significant figures who ever lived. He had a mystery about him in the way he lived and in the manner of his death that will live and grow after him. He had in him the stuff of which legends are made. John F. Kennedy. What do you think? J.B. Campbell.
Well, anybody who puts his own country's interests first over the interests of the international banking cartel is going to be destroyed. But first, before you destroy them, you got to vilify them. And so now Putin is being vilified Why? Well, because the Zbigniew-Brzezinski crowd, of which Obama is a member, Obama is guided and controlled by Zbigniew-Brzezinski just as Jimmy Carter was a generation ago in the 1970s. Zbigniew-Brzezinski started the infamous Trilateral Commission because he wrote a book called Between Two Ages, and David Rockefeller read the book. He liked it. He said, let's do this. Let's make something along these lines. And they created this Trilateral Commission, which was just a kind of a offshoot of the Council on Foreign Relations. Trilateral meant three sides. The one side was North America. They had 80 members from North America, meaning America and Canada. They had 80 members from Western Europe and 80 members from Japan. That was the Trilateral Commission. It still is. But then Brzezinski went on to write the Grand Chessboard, or whatever it's called, and Obama is the pawn. He's Brzezinski's pawn to take us to world war against Russia. Zbigniew-Brzezinski is this crazy Polak who hates Russia with a stinking passion, and he wants to destroy it. Putin played their game, I guess, for many years, until this latest uprising in Ukraine, and Putin allowed Crimea to detach itself from Ukraine and join Russia, and he okayed that. Well, this was a major disappointment to the Brzezinski and Jewish neocon factions. They both want war with Russia. So Putin is being manufactured now into a Hitler-type villain because he puts the interests of Russia over that of the New World Order. As you pointed out earlier, the New World Order is the dictatorship of America. America is the New World. It always was. And, we had other definitions of the New World Order, whether it's the Jew World Order or whatever, but it is the American government as the sole superpower. That was the whole plan of the neocons and of Brzezinski. Now, Brzezinski is not a neocon. He's not a Jew. He's Polish. But he is a fanatic, and he is a Marxist. In the book Between Two Ages, he waxed eloquent about socialism as conceived by Karl Marx. And that was his whole purpose in life, was to bring about socialism as designed by Karl Marx. He just doesn't, he's not under the sway of the Jews the way most Americans are. And most American politicians are totally controlled by Jews, as we see with AIPAC. AIPAC controls American politicians 100%. Brzezinski is above that. And he's got this mysterious control over Barack Obama. And Obama is obeying the Brzezinski plan and the neocon plan to go to war, world war with Russia. Anyway, Ukraine is just, again, like Poland. In the years leading up to World War II, Poland was encouraged by Churchill and by Roosevelt to commit atrocities against the German people living in Poland, because Poland is a fake country. Its borders have always changed. It's never been a solid country. It's just been a bunch of crazy people who thought they could kick Germany's ass. So it didn't work out. But they were betrayed by Roosevelt and Churchill. They were encouraged to attack and kill Germans living in Poland, which drove the Germans slightly crazy. Say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to our people? Screw you. Why do you keep doing it? And Hitler said, well, look, come on, let's have peace. Don't fall for this. But the stupid Poles kept doing it. And finally Germany said, okay, if you don't quit doing this, I'm going to have to come in there and restore order and stop you from killing all these Germans. inside Poland. Well, at the same time, Stalin attacked from the east. That was okay. Churchill and Roosevelt didn't say a peep about that. But when Germany was going into Poland to rescue Germans, Stalin was going in from the east to take over land. That was okay, because we were pro-communist. We were anti-German, anti-Nazi, but pro-communist. And then we quickly became the military partners of the Soviet Union. It was unbelievable. And then after the war, you know, we had the Yalta Conference, which allowed Russia, the Soviet Union rather, to take over Eastern Europe and China. That's what we agreed to. We signed off on that. What the hell? This is what America is and always has been. Because of what? Because of the Constitution. Because the Constitution empowered these criminals. You know, why do we have the Bill of Rights? To protect us from the Constitution. We gotta abandon this monstrous document that led to our downfall. I mean, it led to the Civil War. It empowered a psychopath named Abraham Lincoln to get 850,000 Americans killed for his own egocentric, maniacal dreams of immortality, holding the Union together. What Union? What the hell's a Union? Is it a Union so important to justify 850,000 people being killed? Is that how good a Union is? A federal government? That's what he wanted to hold it. He wanted to hold the federal government over the whole landmass, including the southern states. You know, it wasn't a civil war. A civil war means two sides or more, but usually two sides are vying for political control. Well, the South wasn't trying to take over the North. The South just withdrew. So we want out of this. You people are raping us with these tariffs. We're the ones paying the tariffs. You want our cotton. You don't care how it's picked. You just want the cotton. We want out. We want out of this thing. It was not a civil war. It was a war of northern aggression. But it was made possible by the Constitution, which created a dictatorship. Because like I said, once the President, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the Supreme Court are all pretty much on the same side, what do you got? You got a dictatorship. What do we have today? We got a dictatorship. We're under a dictator, a homosexual dictator. I mean, I'm a one-note Charlie. I say the same thing. I say the same thing since 1968. We have to overthrow this federal government. It is our downfall. It is killing us. It's killed millions and millions and millions of people overseas. It's gotten hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans killed. What is the good part about the federal government? Where is one thing that we can point to that the federal government has done? And I say, well, Eisenhower gave us the interstate system, highway system. Well, is it? Okay. He stole money from the people. He wanted a way to get tanks around the country really fast. It had to be a really strong roadbed so it would support tanks. That's what the whole interstate system is for, is military control of the United States. So they get tanks on lowboys around the country quickly. That's all it's for. The fact that it copied Hitler's Autobahn to give high-speed travel, that was a side benefit. But the whole purpose of it was military. It still is. So we could have done without the interstate system. I mean, I'd rather have freedom and liberty than the damn interstate system. If that's the one thing people can point to as a justification for the federal government.
And we are getting tanks. The local police departments all around the country are being given armored vehicles, bomb-proof armored vehicles, and it's we are being set up, divide and conquer, us against the police, the veterans, and I know I'm going to probably trip your trigger with this one, because you talk about this on every show, and you're absolutely right, Brandon Robb. You know, they're drugging our veterans. If you got a conscience, well, you're a dangerous veteran, huh? You should be drugged. They should be giving you drugs, and if you take the drugs, then you're not, you shouldn't be trusted with a weapon.
Doesn't that just about sum it up? I mean, that sums up our federal government. When you're an active duty soldier, Marine, airman, or sailor, you're a hero. You're one of the heroes, boy. And you're doing what the Jews want you to do. You're being all you can be. You're fighting for our freedom somewhere. Haven't quite figured out how that works, but you're fighting for our freedom, by God. You're killing the enemy. You're putting yourself in harm's way. You are one tough, wonderful son of a bitch. But as soon as you are demobilized, as soon as you get out of the military, as soon as you become a veteran, oops, you become a liability. You're no longer an asset. You are considered a terrorist or a potential terrorist. You are considered the most likely potential terrorist. How does that work?
Now, I've said for years here that the reason they sprayed us with Agent Orange in Vietnam is they didn't want well-trained, disciplined troops coming back from overseas to this country to see how our domestic enemies have enslaved us. The same thing with depleted uranium. Here, son, take this ammunition. It'll kill you in a few years, and it may kill your grandchildren or your children or your grandchildren, but here, it'll take out that tank.
Same with drugs. The Vietnam guys were saturated with drugs, and it was considered a fact of life in Saigon or wherever you were over there. The same with Afghanistan. Our guys are over there protecting the opium trade. You know, in 2003 or 2000, whenever I think it was 2002 actually. America, 2003 I guess. America went into Afghanistan. Fox News, I heard it, and I used to watch television. I don't watch it anymore, but at the time I was watching Fox News, and it was revealed. It said, the Fox News said that the Taliban, which had been in power for 4 years and was the ally of America, people forget that part, the Taliban had eradicated 100%, according to Fox News, they eradicated 100% of the opium poppies. And they used pretty draconian means to do it, because that's what America said it wanted. It wanted an end to the opium trade, the heroin trade. So the Taliban took it seriously, wiped out the opium crop in Afghanistan. But, said Fox News, now that the United States Army is in charge, the Army has authorized the Northern Alliance. They were our new buddies, our new friends in Afghanistan after the Taliban became our enemies. They've authorized the Northern Alliance to resume poppy production in Afghanistan. Now we know today that the opium production in Afghanistan has exploded, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times what it was at its peak before the Taliban. The Taliban, when they were our friends, were asked by Richard Armitage, who ran the opium program in Vietnam with Shackley and Kleins and von Marbod and all these sons of bitches under Oliver North. Richard Armitage told the Taliban, we would like a pipeline across your country. I think it was called the Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan pipeline to take oil and gas from Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan across down to Pakistan, where it could be transported to China. And the Taliban said, no, we don't want a pipeline. We don't want ExxonMobil or Chevron or whoever, BP, going across our country. Oh, really? Armitage said, and this was a quote from the Taliban representative, he said, Armitage said we could have a carpet of gold or a carpet of bombs, our choice. Well, we turned down the carpet of gold, which meant the pipeline, and we got the carpet of bombs. That's the American way. That's what America does. Always has.
You know, I mentioned earlier in an earlier column that, you know, our heroes have always been cowboys, but I certainly don't agree. That was a propaganda film, too. Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and Tom Mix were a propaganda to make us believe somehow it was okay to go off and kill all those Indians. I personally think we'd been a lot better off if we'd followed the Indian culture and the Indian way of life here a little closer than following this European box house type of culture.
I agree with that.
I mean, I think I still got it up on my libertyvillages.org page. Somebody asked an old Indian chief, you know, what he thought about the progress of the white man. He said, you know, before the white man came, we had plenty of beaver, plenty of buffalo. You know, the women did all the work, and you know, were there for sex every night. Only the white man is stupid enough to think he could improve on a system like that.
Yeah.
You know, JB, the whole idea of a revolution, what they do is divide and conquer us. And you and I can't get a job. You and I can't run a business. I mean, I've had $1 million businesses 10 years ago, and those were taken out. You can't even get a job, and you work for the oil companies. I mean, you drill the wells. That was your profession. They've stopped you from even getting a job now. If we can't afford to buy ammunition, if we can't afford to buy gasoline, I had to borrow money to get my motorcycle out of the shop so I would have some transportation to be able to go get groceries, to go get mail. And, you know, from running and owning a $1 million business that I actually sold half of it to a publicly traded company 10 years ago, within a year of me getting out of the hospital, that deal evaporated. I can't go through with it, Clay. I can't go through with it. They've contacted every stockholder to tell them what an anti-Semite you are. I mean, and you know, the anti-Semite is the same thing as calling you a Nazi today. Oh, you got an article on Hitler, or you got a video on Hitler on your website? You must be a Nazi. Not only are you an anti-Semite, you're a Nazi now. Not for supporting anybody, not supporting the bankers, not supporting Hitler, not supporting Obama, and damn sure not supporting Songbird McCain, who made propaganda films while he was supposedly in the Hanoi Hilton. I mean, I'm just asking myself, who are we doing this for? Who are we trying to straighten things out for? Who are we trying to find independence? And the best thing that could happen to us is what I've said in my whole Liberty Village concept. If you grow your own food, provide your own energy, just like they're doing in Germany right now. Every farmhouse has solar on it. They got fields of solar in Germany. JB, they could make electric cars that would run off of the roadways that would light up with solar panels. They could turn all that blacktop asphalt, stinking asphalt, into solar panels, and your cars would run on it. It could draw power off of it. Your cars could draw power. Well, you need batteries? No, you don't. All you need is a little alternator and all four of your wheels, and that'll generate enough electricity to charge your batteries or run the car without even using the batteries. We've got the technology. In 6 states, they're putting greenhouses on the roof of the supermarket chains. So when you buy a vegetable, instead of getting a Monsanto GMO vegetable trucked in from using Rockefeller's gas from Mexico, you can walk into the supermarket and buy one that was picked that day. Didn't use any gasoline to get it to you. We really got the answers are all there. The sun, oh, we got the same problem with that sun that Morgan had with Tesla. Where do we put the meter? Where do we put the meter? How are we going to charge you for all that energy every time you turn on a light bulb if you're getting all your energy from the sun? We got the answers, but they're not going to let us have it. They want to keep you enslaved to the power companies. And just what you've done, I mean, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about this political party, this non-political political party that you've created. I'd like to know what your what the draw is, because I think that's a really a good idea. But you know, if we just worked in our own neighborhood, our own towns, our own and worked together like you're doing, you ought to turn a neighborhood watch into something a lot more like Oklahoma did, a food co-op, putting the people in the city together with the farmers, cutting out all the middlemen. Totally. The answers are here, but the people won't support us. I don't have the money to get to Austin to speak at an event. What, you know, well, who are we doing this for? Who do we want to save if we are, if the people won't support people like you and I that are trying to get the truth out there, that are trying to bring them the information to them, that are trying to tell them the truth? If they won't support us, if they won't buy a magazine, if they won't make a donation, who the hell are we doing it for? Why are we doing this? Maybe the people are just going to get the government they deserve by their own inactivity, by their own inattention, by their own delusion.
Yeah, somebody asked me back in the 90s, in the militia, before the militia was destroyed. We were up in Montana, you know, with that bunch of phonies, the militia of Montana. Turned out to be a federal sting operation. But anyway, somebody said to me, now what exactly are you doing this for? I mean, are you doing this for the American people? And I had to stop and think. That's a pretty good question. I guess guys such as you and I like to fight. I don't know if I can say the same for the American people.
Is that a cat or a cougar? My God.
A cat who thinks he's a cougar. I just tossed a pin at him to make him shut up. He did. He said, what did you do that for? Well, I can't stand your voice, you know, to be honest with you. Nice cat, but he's a little loud. But I thought to think, I don't know what I'm doing this for, except I like to fight. I mean, I went to Rhodesia to join up over there. I didn't have to do that. I like to fight. I fought in high school. I fought in grade school. I'm a fighter. And I don't like bullies. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like authority. I certainly don't like this stinking constitution and this government we're under, so I'm going to fight it. If anybody joins, that's fine. But I think you have to like to fight to do this. And maybe American people don't like to fight. I don't know. But
I remember telling somebody I was in Tucson. A guy was harassing one of my female cousins, and I stepped up beside him and I said, "Are you insane? Just for your information, I'm from Texas and I like to fight. You better leave her alone." Because see the guy standing next to her? That's her brother. The other guy, 6-foot guy sitting on the other side of her, that's her brother. And we're from Texas, and we like to fight.
Yeah, I mean, there's that aspect, and I'm in that crowd. I don't know how big it is, but as we saw with the Bundy deal, there's some guys who like to fight. So I think that's what motivates some of us. I don't know if it motivates enough of us. That remains to be seen. I think the revolution is going to start because of the police. I think the police have become such monsters and so sadistic and malevolent that it's going to drive people to fight them and kill them, because a lot of them need killing. Now, how about these two cops in Vegas who were eating hamburgers when they got shot by these two deranged people? Well, let's talk about that for a second. Police are on the wrong side. I don't care how nice a guy is who's in the police. He's still on the wrong side. He's got that license to kill us. And he's going to get away with it if he decides to kill us. That's been shown over and over and over. Every day, they're killing innocent people. They're getting away with it. They threw a goddamn flashbang grenade into a baby's crib the other day, maimed it for life. They're getting off. Oh, the chief said they acted within proper procedure. Really? They got the wrong house. They threw a grenade into a crib, but they were operating within procedure? Okay. Well, some people can't live under that type of tyranny. I'm one of them.
In your political party, well, this is why I got into the thing, and I was in Miami sitting on my canal front house watching what happened at Waco, and I swore, where's the Texas Rangers? Where's the DPS? Where's the Sheriff's Department? Why are they letting them do this? I swore I wouldn't sit back and watch them murder children again without trying to do something. It's why I started the magazine. It's why I started the radio show. It's why I started the militias. But where were those people?
You remember who was in charge of that military operation in Waco?
Janet Reno, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, but you know who supplied the armored personnel carriers and flamethrowers?
Who was that?
It was Wesley Clark.
And then he went back to try to defend them, or to try to suck up, or what?
Well, Ann Richards was governor, as I recall.
Yes.
And she was the one that authorized the use of the flamethrowers and the APCs and all the military operations by Delta Force. But Wesley Clark, General Wesley Clark, who's Jewish, supplied the equipment from, I think, Fort Hood. What the hell? I mean, that was strictly illegal. Strictly illegal. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's America. When the chips are down, they'll use tanks, helicopters, flamethrowers, atom bombs. It doesn't matter. They'll use whatever it takes.
How many millions of rounds has the Department of Homeland Security issued? All of these police departments, these SWAT teams are being funded by the Department of Homeland Security. Now, when I filmed The True Face of FEMA, when I filmed Colonel John Brinkerhoff lecturing law enforcement at Sandia Lab, telling us we're going to be in for a long war, this war will be fought on American soil, and in case of a single outbreak of smallpox or atomic attack or a earthquake of sufficient magnitude, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them won't follow orders. And that's what we see happening now. Are you talking about the National Guard, Colonel? No, they're going to be in Iraq or guarding the opium poppy fields in Afghanistan or in Iran or someplace like that. So where are all these armed troops? One of the things I said, even back then, 10 years ago, that they may use the illegals that are being flooded into this country. They will give them citizenship if they join the Army and follow orders. Don't question your orders. So, we've got the police forces that are being made into armored troops. And we've got illegal aliens that'll follow orders and disarm Americans. And that's why we're having all these shootings. All these, this is why they shot the cops, to urge people, to put it into people's minds, we need to get rid of the guns. We need to disarm. Those were conspiracy theorists there in Las Vegas. Those were conspiracy theorists. We got to take the guns away. We got to take the guns away. And you know, there's a few things we could do about all these killings. You could make schools suck less. You could cover victims, not the shooters. And it's a nomenclature. Mass shootings are now terrorist attacks. Shooters are now terrorists. You know, here are your rules. A Muslim shooter is a terrorist. A white shooter is mental illness. A black shooter is a cult of violence. And the whole word terrorist has been unfairly connected only to acts of violence committed by radical Muslims, even though any violent act committed with a preconceived political agenda is an act of terrorism. I've told people 10 years ago that your chances of being killed by a terrorist in America are about the same as getting eaten by a great white shark in Phoenix. But your chances of being killed by a cop are increasing exponentially on a daily basis. They are shooting unarmed people in vehicles that didn't stop quick enough. As you pointed out, they threw a flashbang grenade into a baby's crib in the wrong house. And the whole war on drugs. Another guy was shot in his bathroom trying to flush a little bit of marijuana after the cops kicked in the door.
A 93-year-old woman in Texas shot 5 times. They said, oh, she was carrying a gun. Well, it turns out she wasn't. But nothing happened to the guys who killed her. Another kid, the cop said, oh, he was trying to swallow some contraband. They stuck a sharp object down his throat to retrieve the contraband. They killed him. He bled to death. Turned out he didn't swallow any contraband. The cops are the terrorists. Everybody's afraid of the cops. That means they're terrorists. They operate on fear.
You don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling when you see a cop in your rearview mirror, do you?
No, you better be ready to shoot, because he's just as likely to shoot you as not these days. That's the way it is, and they're being encouraged by leadership. That's where we are. So, yeah, we started this American Defense Party with this in mind. I mean, we got to start a revolution. We got to have a revolution. That's how the whole thing started back in 1775 at Lexington. So we got to do it again. That's just human nature. That's just the way it goes. You know, you let things go, and it becomes a tyranny. And then you got to fight, and you will overthrow the tyranny if you fight smart and tough. That's what we got to do. And I think it's going to start against the police, because the police are the janissaries. They're the guys that have been ordered to oppress us and to scare us and to kill us, to make us feel insecure. So we'll go along with what the federal government wants. And the cops, the local cops, are all federalized. They're all working for the federal government. They're all, as you pointed out, they're all getting federal MRAP vehicles and weapons and ammunition and whatever, grenades, bazookas. I mean, they're getting it all from the federal government, turning them into little federal centurions.
The whole fusion center, that stemmed from Senate Bill 1959, homegrown terrorism. They tried to make us into homegrown terrorists for speaking out against the federal government. And that became the fusion centers. Now the fusion centers are monitoring all the calls. And, you know, that's why I really liked your plan for this American Defense Party. It called for police review boards, citizen review boards. See, you need to take these cops that are just indiscriminately killing. It needs to be taken out. And I further believe that we need to abolish all the laws against victimless crimes. If there ain't a crime, if there ain't a complaint, if nobody's hurt, we don't need to be putting people in jail, in prison, and spending $50,000 a year to give them room and board in a prison where they could be worked as slaves.
Now, there is one bright spot. You mentioned Colorado and Washington on the marijuana issue, but there's a bright spot also in Missouri. As I understand it, Missouri has passed a law that nullifies all federal firearms laws. Here in Idaho, the state legislature has passed a law that nullifies all future federal firearms laws, but Missouri has nullified them all, past, present, and future. That's pretty good. I like the sound of that.
Step in the right direction.
Yeah, good start.
We have to really take back our states, and to do that, you need to start with your county. You need to sign up with this American Defense Party and start talking about it to your neighbors. I mean, what they've tried to do, and you know, I refer to myself as a canary in the coal mine. What they've tried to do is demonize you for even listening to me, for subscribing to me, for supporting me. Somehow that makes you a bad guy if you want to hear both sides of the story. And if you were listening to us and then you had the balls to go out and talk to your neighbors and say, you know, hey, listen, why don't we try to band together in this neighborhood, have some neighborhood meetings, sign up for a neighborhood defense force, and grow food, not grass, in the backyard, capture our water, and if we all work together and we build cisterns and rain barrels, we can tell Colorado to go to hell, because you ought to be able to defend yourself for catching the water off of your roof, for catching the sunlight on your roof. You know, these laws that they're passing are simply color of laws. They ain't real laws. They don't have the right to issue your water to you. Not really. Any more than they got the right to make you into a criminal and take your guns away. Now they're trying to indoctrinate your children to create homosexuals out of them. That's happening in some schools. This is all insanity, folks, and it's only done to a servile people. I mean, I've said, JB, that they have really refined the art of slavery to the point the slave don't know they're a slave. I'm not a slave, man. I can go get my pickup and go get a beer. Watch. It's called economic slavery. And they make so many things illegal that they can find you guilty of something somewhere along the line. Whether it's smoking a joint, whether it's, parking in the wrong spot, whether it's owning a gun. All Obama's got to do is suddenly write an executive order that makes it illegal to own a gun. And kind of like, what was it? That state back east, Connecticut, where if you didn't register your gun, suddenly you were going to be a criminal, and the people that didn't register the guns were the police.
Same in New York. I hope he does. I hope he signs that executive order and outlaws all firearms. I think that would be the greatest thing that ever happened in America. Because then we find out who's who. And then we get this thing going. Because that's what it's going to take. Obama's desperate. He gave a speech the other day, or he answered a question the other day, lamenting the fact that he couldn't do what Australia did. I don't know how the hell that happened in Australia. That's a major shock and disappointment to me that the Australians would turn in those guns just because some son of a bitch said so. What the hell is that? Okay, but we learned our lesson from Australia. We saw what happened. The crime rates skyrocketed once everybody was disarmed. And even if they didn't turn in all the guns, they kept them. They were afraid to use them because, if you use a gun to defend yourself, well, you're going to get busted. So let's do that here. Let's try it. I want to encourage Obama to do this. And Holder, the guys who armed the Mexican drug cartels out of the Texas and Arizona and New Mexico gun shops. Let's do that. Let's do what they say. Let's outlaw guns and see where it takes us. That's what it's going to take. We have to have a revolution, and not some political thing like the Tea Party. That's a bunch of crap. That still supports the federal government. Tea Party or whatever, you come up with some kind of a so-called patriotic political party that votes, that puts people in office. Well, you're supporting the federal system. You got to outlaw. You got to overthrow the federal system and make sure it never happens again. That's what the American Defense Party is. It's a political party, but there's no voting. There's no candidates for anything. We're not going to put anybody in office. The office has got to go. The office is what's killing us.
What kind of response? What kind of response have you had on that? I'm not. I was initially encouraged that we've got the internet. We can reach millions of people on the internet without having to use Hearst paper or DuPont ink or Rockefeller's gasoline to deliver it. We can reach millions of people on the internet, but we're not reaching millions of people. What kind of response? It's strange. I've got my phone number up on my website, and we do this show, and nobody ever calls. Nobody ever goes to freeamerican.com and calls. Not many people are buying the books, and not many people are buying the magazines. And there's lots of good information on the magazine. First 11 issues I gave away. They're free. You can get it down and read it. See what I've been publishing for 20-some odd years. I actually know what I'm doing, and I choose pretty good guests, and I choose pretty good stories to put in the magazine. But I'm blocked in libraries, I'm blocked at Intel, I'm blocked in Intuit, I'm blocked at Office Depot. You can't pull up the Free American in Office Depot. Why? Oh, I'm some kind of porno site. Probably because I've got the copy of Protocols of the Elders of Zion up. Or, if you do a search for Hitler, you might hit the Free America. So, there...
We have a lot of interference noise here. I don't know what's going on your end, but
well,
anyway,
we
the internet is a two-edged sword. It's a miracle. There's no question the internet is the most significant miracle that's ever been created, in my opinion. But it's a two-edged sword. It is, on the good side, it has destroyed the prostitute news media. They are shutting down because of the internet. It's destroyed the New York Times. The New York Times has admitted that it's going to go online because there's no reason to read a newspaper anymore. It was all about advertising anyway. And now nobody wants to deal with cumbersome paper. Okay, that's something. That's good in a way. But as you pointed out, it has killed the book industry. I mean, nobody buys books anymore because they get a fast charge reading stuff online. You can become a real student of things on the internet. You can learn more than you ever dreamed possible. But it's short-circuiting something in us. You know, books are necessary. Books are great. As far as I'm concerned, I've read everything that's worth reading. I don't want to read anymore. But children need books. They shouldn't be finding stuff online. They should be reading books. And the internet has killed the book industry, as far as I can see. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's the way it seems to me. And the book industry is so controlled by Jews that you're not going to get any heroic stories anymore in paperbacks or, you know, I don't like the great literature. The great literature to me is boring as hell. I don't find anything of value in there that you can teach children how to become heroes. I mean, you learn how to become a hero by watching Davy Crockett back in 1954 and 55. That's how you learn to be a hero. And there was some pretty good stuff coming out of Hollywood in those terms. At least it taught children about fighting evil. But we don't get that anymore. So they're really being cheated. And the internet is, you know, partly to blame for that, I guess. But you ask about the Defense Party. No. I haven't gotten one dime of support. Well, maybe a dime on that regard for the party. But it's not really necessary as far as I see. I'm just trying to spread the word that we got to fight. And it doesn't require any money being sent to me to spread that word. We got to fight. We got to be ready to kill our enemies, not the foreign enemies, the domestic enemies. They're the ones that threaten us. They're the ones that want to put us in camps. They dream about it. They're the ones that are creating these designer diseases. So you got to be ready to wipe them out. And the American Defense Party just tried to show that, no, let's not put any more people in office. Let's not support this federal government anymore. This is the enemy. This is what's killed us. We need a party because I think human nature requires to belong to a political party. But it must not be allowed to seek any power over other people by putting people in office. You know, what do you do when you vote somebody in office? You give them the power that you wouldn't have, that would be illegal if you did it by yourself. But you empower probably the scum of the earth. Anybody who wants to become a congressman today, or a senator, or a president, or a city councilor, is pretty much scum. You know, there's no way to justify politics anymore. It's just for the scum to rise to the top and control us. We vote for these people. We got to stop doing that. That's what's killed us. Because eventually they become so power crazy and greedy that they go to war. They want to go to war because it keeps them in power and gives them unbelievable power over us during wartime. That's why the presidents all dream about being wartime presidents. That's what Bush wanted. He wanted to be a wartime president. He had the total power over the people. So we got to stop this whole system. And that's what we stand for with this American Defense Party. It's not that we want any power. We want there to be no power over us. And you got to be willing to kill. to prevent that, because that's human nature.
In my opinion, if we make a mistake, if we elect people that want to pass more laws, we ought to be eliminating laws. We ought to be abolishing laws.
Exactly. The law is a Jewish plot. You know, the law is a way for Jews to have control over us that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have, because then they control the police and the military with their laws. They control the court system. I mean, how many, you know, we got Jews are 1.7% of the population, supposedly. I mean, I don't even know if that's true, but that's what they admit to. That makes them look harmless. I mean, there must be more than that, because they control everything. They control every aspect of our lives, from the government down, to entertainment, to news, to medicine, to the law. It's all controlled by Jews. So how do they get so many people in these controlling positions if they only have 1% of the population?
They print their money. They print their own money, and they give it to anybody that goes along with their form of control.
Well, that's it. They control the money supply, which has got to be eliminated. You know, the Federal Reserve. I mean, we say in the American Defense Party that we got to overthrow the federal government. Well, how do you do that? Well, there are 3 private Jewish organizations that run the federal government. In other words, these 3 private Jewish organizations are the federal government. They are the Federal Reserve System, private Jewish organization, totally Jewish. The APAC, America Israel Public Affairs Committee, that controls the Congress, 100%. You don't do what APAC wants, you're gone. Might even die. And there's the Council on Foreign Relations that makes all of our government policies, a private Jewish organization. So you get rid of these 3 organizations, that's all you got to do. The federal government will collapse, because it will have no money, and no orders, and no policies, no control. Really simple. Just like you mentioned Neighborhood Watch. Well, we got one here with a difference, because we swear an oath to support our fellow members of the Neighborhood Watch. The same as the American Defense Party, same thing, same idea, on a local level. We have radios, we have guns, we got lots of both, and we can communicate with ourselves on these radio frequencies. We're all on the same frequency. If anybody has a jam, we will be there. And the feds know it, they don't think with us. The cops know it, they don't mess with us. That's what you got to have, though. You got to be willing to fight and kill. That's America, man. That's what it's all about. Otherwise, you become a slave. You become a nothing.
Now, how do people get to the American Defense Party? Where is that?
AmericanDefenseParty.com.
Okay. All right, that'll be up on my website along with this show. It'll be right under this show. Got a little bit of background, your background. How you fought in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. It's
yeah, because we lost.
That's right. And by the way, these FEMA camps, they found a good use for them. They're putting homeless people in them.
Right.
And making it against the law to be homeless.
Fort Lyon, Colorado is now a homeless camp. It's a FEMA camp in Fort Lyon, Colorado. That's for the homeless now. There must be a bunch of others, because a whole bunch of people have disappeared from Detroit. You know, 1.8 million people have disappeared. They must be somewhere, or maybe they're dead.
Well, we'll never know. You get in one of these FEMA camps, you will never get any information from the inside. We won't know what happened to the people. J.B. Campbell, we're out of time here. Let people know, if you got an email list, let them know about this show, about the Free American. I've had my motorcycle go down, I've had my computers go down, and I've got everything working again. I still need your help, folks. We need, you can make a donation at freeamerican.com, and for you people that have, I appreciate it. And JB, God bless you. I love the work that you're doing, and we will take it back.
Same here, Clay. Thank you.
God bless you. Bye-bye.